Hi, I'm Danielle, and I'm so glad that you're here because together we're going to work through big stuff. How do you know if you are truly living aligned to your values or if you're just living by default? I don't think anyone ever really wakes up one day and consciously decides to compromise on everything that is important to them. It happens slowly. It's that real frog in the pot. One small choice at a time, right? One yes when we mean no. One compromise that turns into a pattern or something that is simply just assumed that it will be, until one day you look up and you realize I'm not actually living a life that I believe in or even consciously chose. In this episode of the Big Stuff Summer Series, I'm weaving together 3 stories about women who got crystal clear about their non-negotiables. And what we will find is that clarity, when you have that clarity, that brutal honesty about what really matters to you at the core of who you are, that can give you the freedom to make the tough choices. Lisa walked away from anything that conflicted with her family. Phoebe chose herself over a wedding that everyone expected her to go through with. And in a recent How Are You Really, I was answering a question about living up to family expectations. And we all learned through that to stop negotiating for permission to live your one big, beautiful life. And this is really what happens when you stop asking, what should I do? And start asking, when I connect to what is truly important to me, what is the no-brainer here? When I really ask myself at my core, what are my non-negotiables? What do I stand by? What is it that is truly important to me? Then everything becomes so much clearer. So let's dig into this episode. Lisa Schweihofer co-founded a multi-million-dollar beauty company, Boost Lab, with her husband, Craig. She's the face of the brand. She travels internationally and she lives an incredible life. But here's something that you really need to know about Lisa. She will walk away from all of it in a heartbeat if it conflicts with what actually matters to her. And what matters? Family. Always family.
I 100% get that. But look, I think you're choosing what you don't change.
Yeah.
And if you've got to choose what you want, it's your life and you've got to live it how you live it. And then once you have kids, you got to live it like you're responsible for them as well, up to a certain point. And if you don't change your situation, then you're choosing it.
Yeah. I agree. Again, to a point, I think there are some things that are completely out of our control, but certainly the life circumstances that are within your control that you continually complain about. Yeah, there's definitely, we can be making different choices or certainly taking empowered action towards making change. So at least you feel like you're trying, you're doing something.
And I think we've got to look at it too. It's like, I know it sounds really corny almost, but like I said, it's your life. You've got to live it how it is. But like every situation you're in isn't going to last forever. Like you're not going to have a newborn forever. You're not going to have a toddler forever. You're not going to have school kids forever. It's like another chapter. So be in the one that you're in and enjoy what you can about that. And I don't think you realize that until you've gone through it and you look back and you just go, God, I don't even remember that.
And 10 years, right?
Yeah.
That is a really long time when you're in it.
Yep.
And then now that you're on the other side of it and you're like kicking all of these career goals, you wouldn't have even imagined this back then because there were times where you were like, what am I even going to do? What is my life going to, what is next for me? Because this was not even on the radar.
No. And we're about to have our first grandbaby. And we're just like, how did that happen? Oh my God. Like we just had our kids, didn't we? Like, oh my God, this is going to be crazy.
So you've gone from like the world's most unusual hammer to a beauty brand, and there was a couple of businesses in there.
Yeah.
So you really sometimes can't imagine or can't foresee the road ahead of you when you are stuck in kind of the weeds.
Yeah, you just got to live it as it comes. Take it as you can have a plan, but plans always.
They say
what that's a plan. You can have an idea of what you want to do, but then something pops up. You're not going to say no to something. Oh no, I'm sticking to my plan. God, you miss out on too much if you do that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, businesses and everything.
You're choosing what you don't change. I'm telling you, that sentence hit me right between the eyes. There was a real mic drop moment, I think, for Lisa, or from Lisa, highlighting that inaction is a choice in itself. Staying in the situation you hate, a choice, right? Not setting the boundary, that's a choice. Accepting what doesn't align with your values because it's easier than speaking up or easier than changing it. Yeah, man, that's a choice. And I get it. It's hard. I've done it too, right? I've chosen not to change things. I've just accepted things. I did a lot in my first marriage, and I realized one day that I was never going to be able to change the situation to be what it was that I really needed, and that I needed to leave. But I had made so many compromises on what I really needed, what was important to me, what I valued in relationships over the 8 years that we were together. It didn't start out that way. Our first date didn't start out with enormous compromises. Of course it didn't. It started out with everybody's best representations of themselves. And over time, we courted, and then we ended up living together, and then we had kids. Things happen by degrees. They really do. They are small micro decisions or small micro compromises that happen time and time again until you find yourself in a situation where you're like, I don't think that this is tenable. This is not sustainable. I'm losing myself in this situation. And if you can't find a way back on track in that situation, whether it is a relationship or it is work, in whatever sort of circumstance it is, if you can't find a way back, then the choice is yours. You get to choose. You have to choose. Otherwise, you stay out of alignment, in misalignment with yourself. The reason that we will often stay in situations like this is really fear-based. And sometimes we would like to think it's because we don't want to rock the boat. We don't want to make the wrong decision. We may even fear change, but ultimately we're looking at really sort of fear-based decisions. Better the devil we know. We are staying in these situations, choosing the same thing over again, even when we know that it is not aligned with who we are, what we want, how we want to live our lives, because we are scared. I got clear on my non-negotiables in relationships, and I had never actually done that before. So I found that I would often end up accepting what I thought I deserved in relationships, not what I actually desired. I had had many relationships prior to that one that were physically, emotionally abusive, coercive, gaslighting, all of these things. Yes, I had lots of self-esteem work to do. Yes, I had lots of self-worth work to do. But I had never gotten really, really clear on what is important to me and what will I stand for, what will I not stand for. These are non-negotiables in my values system and my expectations of how people treat me, right? So Lisa's philosophy with her family and her business being able to have flexibility around her family is really almost like brutal in its clarity. Once you have kids, you have to live like you are responsible for them. Not sometimes, not when it's convenient, always. And that is Lisa's non-negotiable, and Craig's as well, both of them, where they are completely on the same page with that. That is the line they will not cross, no matter the cost, right? Family first. But what about when the non-negotiable isn't about your kids or your family or your relationship, right? What about when it is really, it's about you? My next guest, 2 months before her wedding, Dr. Phoebe Rogers was having panic attacks, she said. And these were her body keeping the score. Her body was telling her what she needed to know. Every time she pictured herself saying, I do, she would visualize herself running away from the altar. But she nearly went through with it anyway.
I look back, I was like, that's what I was telling myself, right? Because I was 35, 36 and experience, and I think I just wanted to believe it, as we all do. So yes, I remember, trying on the wedding dress and actually telling that story and saying, yes, when you know, you know. But then there were little things, and I think of, a comment my friend made about some of his behaviors, and that stuck with me, but I continued because, you're moving forward, you're living together, you're planning, I was buying my wedding dress and all those incredible things. But then, yeah, part of me had big worries and concerns. I mean, once you start living with someone, I think you really begin to see it.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
And you
yeah.
mentioned in the book that those worries and concerns were coming up as like sort of feelings in your body. What were these? How were these flags? How were you experiencing them in your body?
I was like that heaviness in the pit of your stomach, that kind of dread. And I just kept thinking how women, I would think, would feel about their wedding day to their person. It's like, oh, I'm not feeling that. I'm actually really worried and feeling heavy and tired and drained and concerned. And so, yeah, the happy, bubbly energy really went pretty quickly.
That voice in your head that tells you to be grateful, to not rock the boat, to take what you can get. I mean, that's fucking crazy that we have this voice that keeps us in these situations. Phoebe knew. Her body knew. She was having panic attacks. She was visualizing running away. She felt that sense of heaviness, that sense of dread, and she almost went through with it anyway. And that's, I think, something that is really important to note, that when we are out of alignment with our values, with our value systems, with our non-negotiables, with what's important to us at our core, our body tells us. We feel that sense of friction or conflict or discomfort. I likened it in my book, In the Chocolate Bar Life. I likened that feeling of living out of alignment with having sand in your undies, which sounds funny, but ultimately your body tells you stuff. Your mind can try to override it, but your body speaks to you in the language of the body. So that can happen in any circumstance, okay? Even when it's not about sort of a marriage or a relationship, it's can even be around other people's expectations. So what about when we are trying to live up to something that other people want from us, other people's values that they are trying to impress upon us, right? It's a two-way street. So in a How Are You Really episode recently, I really broke it down for a listener who wrote in talking about living under the weight of the expectations of her family. Let's call her Surfer Girl. Surfer Girl wasn't confused. She said she was. She acted like she was. It felt like she was. That's the conflict. But ultimately, she knew exactly what she wanted, right? The confusion was, am I allowed to desire something different to what my family want for me and from me, right? Ultimately, she was negotiating for permission instead of giving that to herself. Is that something that you do somewhere in your life? Do you ask, am I allowed to want this, rather than saying, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is what I want. And it's okay if you don't want it. And I actually talked about this in a metaphor in my alcohol episode, where I talk about my changing relationship with alcohol and how because I was changing how I felt about alcohol, and I wanted my husband to also change how he felt about alcohol. And so I found myself getting a bit controlling with his drinking. And I mean, that is an ongoing thing for us. We're still working on it. He has cut down and cut down and cut down. But still, you know, I have a physical response to if he does drink. Like I just like it, right? But I remember talking to somebody about something along these lines, and she said to me, you know, it's like telling somebody that to exercise, to get on the treadmill and go for a run. It's like saying, you've got to exercise, you've got to get on the treadmill. I will only be able to love you if you get on the treadmill. And they're like, oh, I don't want to get on a treadmill. Who wants to get on a treadmill, right? But the best thing that you can do is for you to get on the treadmill. If, you know, I mean, the treadmill it's a metaphor, right? I hate the treadmill, but you get on the treadmill, you run, you live your best life, you are there feeling vital, feeling active, feeling, you know, looking amazing for the exercise, whatever. And that person will see you on the treadmill and be like, maybe I want to do that too. Okay. So ultimately, when it comes to your values and getting people to live up to your own expectations of values, sometimes it is about living your own best values-led life and allowing them to see that, rather than trying to enforce or shove your own values down somebody else's throat, because that's not cool either. You don't want someone to like enforce or like shove their values on you. You just got to live your life. You do you, boo. You do you. Bonnie Ware was a palliative care nurse, and while she was caring for hundreds, maybe even thousands of people to their very death, she had a lot of conversations. She turned those conversations into a book called The 5 Regrets of the Dying, which is a really life-affirming book. I've done a lot of research into dead, dying books as preparation for my next book that will be coming out. And I have found the more of these books that I've read, the more life-affirmed I actually am. And the number one regret that Bonnie Ware heard time and time again was not, I wish I lived up to the expectations of my parents. No, it was not, I wish I worked more, or I achieved more, or I made more money, or I had greater success. No, the number one regret of the dying was, I wish I had courage to live life true to myself and not the life that others expected of me. Don't be that person. Don't be that person who in your final hours, final moments thinks, I wish I had to live life for me and not through what others expected. We are all running out of time. And I know that that sounds really dramatic, because we might actually live for another 40, 50, 60 years. I don't know. Like, who knows with medical advances? Okay. I don't actually want to live another 60 years. That'll make me 110. Pretty much all of my friends will be dead. My body will be quite clapped out. I've seen like plus 100-year-old people, and you know, it's a quality of life thing. So we don't actually want to live forever. Our time is finite. Our time is finite. So don't regret not taking risks, because people time and time again report the risks that they didn't take, the life that they didn't live, is what they regret more than any mistakes, more than any missteps. People regret abandoned dreams. That's what they regret. When Surfer Girl wrote into me, she said, I'm really confused, which was super interesting because she said, like, I'm really confused. My family want this for me, but I want to live on an island, surf a great break, work my own business and be away from my family. I have found this place in the world where I feel really at home. I'm so confused. But that doesn't sound like confusion in the slightest, right? She told me very explicitly what it is she wants. The confusion comes from it being so different from what everybody expects from her. And then the confusion is, am I allowed to want something? Do I have permission to live outside of this very specific, like, colored lines that other people have created for me? Am I allowed to do that? There isn't a confusion about what you want to do with your life. It is seriously a question in your mind about whether or not you are deserving and allowed to create the life that you want. Are you allowed? Do you have permission to create this life that you want? So the other thing that Surfer Girl went on to say was this compromise that she thought would be good, right? She'll do 3 months here, 9 months there. She will fly back every blah, blah. She will spend this family time. So she is negotiating to have permission, as opposed to, I would really want to have this quality time with them. It is then still coming from the sense of obligation. This is the compromise that I need to make to be in order to have permission to live the way that I want. Can you see the difference? I would love to spend 3 months a year with my family, or in order to be allowed to live overseas, then I have to come back for 3 months a year. It doesn't matter that it's the same result. It's just feeling like you have to do that. You are obligated to do that in order to be allowed to do what you want. You don't need to pay for permission to have the life you want. Does that make sense? You don't need to negotiate the permission. You get to give it to yourself. So here we've had like 3 clarity moments, 3 women. There's Lisa saying that you're choosing what you don't change, and then she will choose her family over everything every single time. There's Phoebe, who had these panic attacks before her wedding and almost went through with it anyway until she finally chose herself and chose to listen to herself. And then there is Surfer Girl, who wasn't confused at all. Surfer Girl just needed permission to, or she was seeking permission, I should say. Surfer Girl was seeking permission that she didn't actually need, right? She just needed to be really aligned with herself and what she wanted, and to live true to that. And none of the choices are easy. Phoebe leaving, like running away from the altar, right? Phoebe canceling a wedding. That is not an easy choice. Lisa making a decision that is family-based over business is not an easy choice. There are people to answer to, right? And then Surfer Girl, the responsibility, if you will, that she feels that she needs to please her family. So therefore, then there is this moment where she needs to let her family down, to be clear in what it is that she wants. That is not easy. But you've got to remember that living your values-led life is exactly that. It is your life. So there is no expectation of others to have the same values or to live the same life. And that, I think, episode that I mentioned before, talking about alcohol and expecting my husband to have the same values or have the same sort of life transition as I'm having, it's not fair, right? It doesn't mean that I'm not going to keep trying, just in case he's listening. But I need to make my decisions for me, and then he will need to make his decisions for him. And that is really what values-led living is. And that can be hard. Yeah, it can be hard. Another thing about values-led living is that it requires really clear communication often, not just once, more than once. Clear communication, really clear boundaries, and that is an ongoing thing. And some people find that really, really uncomfortable. Some people don't love that. So it's important to note that values-based living doesn't necessarily make your life easier. What it does is it makes your decisions clearer. So when you are really clear on what your non-negotiables are, when you truly know deep down in your bones, then you can stop agonizing over the choices that don't align with them, right? And you can stop trying to please everybody else. You also stop living by default. You start choosing, actively, intentionally choosing. So ask yourself now, like, what is it that you are choosing by not changing it? And maybe where in your life are you staying small or stuck or silent and calling it, not choosing or confusion, when actually it's your loudest choice, right? It's not confusion. It is your loudest choice. So what is the thing that you will not compromise on, no matter what it costs you? And are you actually living like that is the truth? Are you negotiating for permission to live your own life? Because no one is going to give it to you. No one. You have to give it to yourself. The number one regret of the dying, according to Bonnie Ware, who was the palliative care nurse, I wish I had the courage to live true to myself. Don't be that person. Do not be that person. Your time is finite. So let's all just vow. Let's all vow today, like, just stop negotiating and start living. See you soon. I hope that you enjoyed listening to this episode of Big Stuff as much as I enjoyed recording it for you. Now, if you did enjoy this episode, it would really help me if you wanted to share it with just one person that you think is going to get something out of it. And also feel free to drop a comment. All of these things really help podcasts to gain more ears, and that's what we're really here for. Also, be sure to subscribe, then you will never miss an episode. If you want to find out more about me, who I am, what I do, then you can go and check me out at daniellecolley.com.au. I'll see you next episode for more big stuff.